Hi everyone, my name is Alyssa, and today I'm going to be talking about weddings. Specifically, I'm going to talk about the sexist nature of wedding ceremonies and traditions that thousands of people practice even in this day and age. I cannot tell you how many times I've heard something like, well, every little girl's dreams about her wedding, or that weddings are all about the bride and it's her day. Pop culture references literally all the time. Watch any movie about a wedding, or even with a wedding scene, and you'll see that at least one thing about how women fantasize their wedding is referenced. There's also probably a Bridezilla reference. So why are weddings so female-focused? I mean, it's not like they're so empowering to women. If you really think about it, they're actually the opposite of that. And it's not like we haven't come far enough as a society to realize that marriage isn't what it used to be. So let's think of some traditional wedding practices that are still, and I want to emphasize this, practiced today, and unpack the sexism rooted in them through a cultural and religious historical context. Let's start with some of the most common ones. In a typical Western wedding, the father gives his daughter away to her husband, like literal property. In an article posted in 2015 on a website titled Love My Dress, this particular tradition was broken down by Natasha Johnson, a wedding blogger, writer, and celebrant who has officiated over 400 weddings. She explains that the tradition of walking a bride down the aisle and giving her away is rooted in the historical context that marriage began in. Fathers were the head of the household, and daughters were considered possessions. Marriage was considered a business transaction approved by the father, and this walk down the aisle symbolized the transaction by literally giving her away. Continuing on this clear-cut expression of patriarchy, let's talk about surnames. Most people do this without second thought, but once we actually start to consider the historical context, it feels pretty oppressive. According to an article written by Maddie Savage, posted to the BBC website in 2020, the tradition of wives taking their husbands' names is pushed by a patriarchal agenda. For one, there's a strong tradition to pass on the male names in many westernized cultures. So society wants male surnames, and sometimes first names, to be passed down through generations. That's why we see so many people naming their firstborn sons after the father. Another reason that she brings up that is the fact that this also symbolizes the traditional sexist gender role that the head of the household is the man because his last name's on the mailbox. Now let's get to what we all were thinking when I said the words sexist and wedding. The white dress. Most of you probably know the history behind this, but let me just give you a quick overview. According to Marlise Shoney in her article posted to The Conversation, an academic blog, the practice of a bride wearing white traces back to over 2,000 years to the Roman Republic. White symbolized purity and chastity and was associated with Vesta, the virgin goddess of hearth, home, and family. The practice resurfaced in 1840 when Queen Victoria wore a gown in her marriage to Prince Albert, and wearing white to a wedding became much more popularized. Culturally, though, it symbolized purity and virginity for the bride, a symbol that she had saved herself for marriage, and something that a lot of religions preach to do so. So this white dress is a symbol that the bride is pure for her groom, which is terribly sexist considering that there's nothing to symbolize that the groom is pure for her. Finally, the whole wedding thing is also just designed with strict gender roles for the husband and wife to follow, which kind of excludes the same-sex marriages. In fact, it used to be really hard to find an officiant to marry same-sex couples, and many churches refused to allow them to have their ceremonies there. In this way, traditions aren't only sexist, but also homophobic. The problem is, we know that marriage means a lot of different things today than it did centuries ago, when most of these practices started, yet we still do them. In a way, it starts off marriage on the wrong, unequal foot, beginning your marriage with patriarchal practice could give you and your partner the wrong idea what marriage is really about. So how can we change it up? Here are some suggestions that I found through my research to make your wedding a little more equal and a lot less sexist. Number 1, walk yourself down the aisle. Marriage is supposed to be about two people uniting in love, not about property exchange. Number 2, keep your last name, or better yet, hyphenate your names. If marriage is about two people in union and your family becoming mine and mine becoming yours, let's share both of our names. Number 3, pick a different color to wear. And if you really don't want to be upset or make anyone upset or make too big of a statement, wear eggshell and stick it to them. Overall, weddings really are what you make of them, and they can mean something different to you than it does to someone else. So, if wearing white, taking your partner's name, and having your father walk you down the aisle is still important to you after hearing all of this, that's fine. It's just nice to know the history and know your options.